Ever notice the price of your morning milk? Or maybe that block of cheddar you like for a late-night snack? It's easy to take these things for granted, to just grab them off the shelf without a second thought. But what if a single trade decision, made thousands of miles away, could subtly nudge those prices up or down? That's the reality of international trade, a complex dance of agreements, regulations, and sometimes disagreements. And today, we're zooming in on a specific instance, a move that sent ripples through the Canadian dairy industry. President: Trump's tariffs on Canadian dairy products. Now you might be thinking, tariffs? Dairy? Sounds dry. But trust me, the story behind these trade barriers is anything but boring. It's a story about economics, politics, and the delicate balance of international relations. It's a story that touches on the livelihoods of farmers, the choices available to consumers, and the very fabric of how we do business across borders. This isn't just about numbers and percentages, it's about people, about the real-world consequences of policy decisions made in Washington and the impact they have here, at home. Think about it. The milk you pour on your cereal, the yogurt you grab for lunch, the cheese that graces your pizza. These are all products of a vast and intricate supply chain, a network of farmers, processors, distributors, and retailers. Any disruption in that chain can have a cascading effect, and tariffs, like the ones now being imposed by the Trump administration, are designed to do just that. They're essentially taxes on imported goods, making them more expensive for consumers. But why would a country impose these kinds of measures? What are the motivations, the justifications, and the potential consequences? We're going to unpack this whole scenario, starting with the initial spark that ignited the trade dispute. We'll delve into the history, the key players, and the underlying economics. We'll explore the arguments for and against these tariffs, and we'll consider the long-term effects on both the Canadian and American dairy industries. We'll also look at the broader implications for international trade and the future of global commerce. So, get ready to dive deep into a story that's far more complex and consequential than a simple price tag on a carton of milk. This is a story of power, policy, and the everyday things that shape our lives. To truly grasp the significance of President Trump's tariffs on Canadian dairy, we must journey back a bit to understand the foundational principles governing trade between Canada and the United States. This isn't a brand new arrangement. It's a relationship built over decades, with agreements aiming to foster economic cooperation and mutual benefit. However, these agreements, while comprehensive, have always been a delicate balancing act, a constant negotiation of competing interests. Building on this, a key element in this complex dance is what's known as supply management, a system that's particularly prevalent in Canada's dairy sector. This system essentially controls the amount of milk produced and imported, aiming to stabilize prices and ensure fair returns for farmers. It's a cornerstone of Canadian agricultural policy, a system that has shaped the dairy industry for years. However, it also became a major point of contention, a lightning rod for criticism from the United States. Consequently, the American argument is that Canada's supply management system unfairly restricts access to the Canadian market for American dairy producers. They contend that the system creates artificial barriers, effectively blocking their products from competing on a level playing field. Furthermore, the perception is that this system, which involves quotas and price controls, is hurting American farmers and consumers alike. Another crucial layer is the political landscape. The trade relationship between the two countries is not solely an economic one. It's deeply intertwined with politics. The imposition of tariffs is not simply an economic decision. It is also a political statement. It is a way for the Trump administration to assert its position, to signal its determination to renegotiate trade deals, and to prioritize American interests as they see them. Now, consider how this applies when you're facing a tense negotiation. Imagine you're trying to secure a better deal, and the other party is digging in their heels. The use of tariffs in this context can be viewed as a powerful tool, a way to apply pressure and force the other side to the negotiating table. It's a tactic that can be effective, but it also carries significant risks. The risk of escalating tensions, the potential for retaliatory measures, and the damage to long-standing relationships. Conversely, the Canadian perspective is that the supply management system is vital for the stability and viability of its dairy farms. Canadian officials argue that their system is not only beneficial to their farmers, but also provides consumers with a reliable supply of high-quality dairy products. They also highlight the fact that the United States has its own forms of agricultural subsidies, which, they argue, are equally distortive of the market. This perspective is crucial to understanding the Canadian response to the tariffs and the subsequent negotiations. Conceptualizing the interplay of global trade, economic policy, and the humble dairy product reveals a landscape far more intricate than a simple transaction. It's akin to observing a complex ecosystem where seemingly isolated elements are, in reality, profoundly interconnected. The actions of one species, in this case a nation's trade policy, ripple outwards, affecting the entire web of life, from the microscopic organisms in the soil to the apex predators at the top of the food chain. We've seen how historical context, the legacy of pre-existing agreements, laid the groundwork for subsequent events, shaping the environment in which this particular trade dispute is unfolding. Drawing these diverse threads together, we begin to see the emergence of a richer, more nuanced picture. The imposition of tariffs isn't simply a unilateral action. It is a calculated move within a larger, more intricate game. It's a game where economic might is often wielded as a bargaining chip, and where the consequences, both intended and unforeseen, can reverberate across international boundaries. The very notion of what constitutes fair trade, we find, is a subject of constant negotiation and redefinition, influenced by shifting political winds and evolving economic realities. In the light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer, like the gradual unveiling of a hidden landscape. We've traversed the terrain of supply management, a system which, while designed to offer a degree of stability, simultaneously became a focal point of contention. We've considered the role of differing national priorities, where the interests of farmers, consumers, and policymakers often clash, creating a dynamic tension. The political currents, too, have shaped the narrative, influencing not only the specific actions taken, but also the overall tone and tenor of the dispute. As we pivot towards the final reflection, let's consider the cumulative effect of these interwoven elements. The story of President Trump's tariffs on Canadian dairy isn't just a tale of trade barriers. It's a microcosm of the challenges inherent in navigating the complexities of the modern world. It reminds us that economic decisions are rarely made in a vacuum, that they are always embedded within a broader context of history, politics, and deeply held values. Reflecting on this journey so far, we can appreciate the intricate choreography of global commerce, where every move has its own set of consequences. So, we arrive at the final chapter of this exploration, and it's time to step back and consider the deeper resonance of what we've uncovered. We've traversed the landscape of international trade, a terrain often obscured by complex jargon and political maneuvering. But at its core, this story, the saga of President Trump's tariffs on Canadian dairy, is a story about choices. Choices made by leaders, choices made by businesses, and choices, ultimately, that affect each and every one of us. It's a reminder that the seemingly simple act of buying a carton of milk is connected to a global network, a web of agreements, regulations, and, yes, sometimes disagreements. We've seen how a single trade decision can send ripples through an entire industry, impacting farmers, processors, and consumers alike. We've also witnessed the interplay of politics and economics, where national interests clash and where the pursuit of advantage can sometimes overshadow the principles of fairness and cooperation. This narrative isn't just about tariffs and supply management. It's about understanding the forces that shape our world. It's about recognizing that the decisions made in the corridors of power have tangible consequences, impacting the lives of everyday people. It's about the importance of asking questions, of seeking to understand the complexities of global trade, and of recognizing that the world is far more interconnected than we often realize. Consider this, then. What does it mean to be a responsible consumer in a world where the price of a product can be influenced by the policies of distant governments? How can we, as citizens, engage with these issues in a meaningful way? The answer isn't always straightforward. It requires a willingness to learn, to question, and to consider multiple perspectives. It calls for a deeper understanding of the economic forces that shape our lives and a commitment to supporting policies that promote fairness and sustainability. The true practice begins now. The true practice begins with a conscious awareness, with a commitment to learning more and to engaging in thoughtful conversations about the issues that matter. It's about recognizing that the decisions we make, both individually and collectively, have the power to shape the future. And as you reach for that glass of milk or the block of cheese, remember that you're part of a much larger story. A story that's still being written, and in which you, as a thoughtful and engaged citizen, have a vital role to play.